I want to preface this video by saying that body language is not always 100% accurate. You'll have to have multiple tells in order to make conclusions on what someone's body language means. In order to obtain an accurate reading, it's important to set up baselines and examine how each subject acts on a regular basis. In today's video, we'll be talking about James Charles and Tati Westbrook. Since my last video on James, a lot has happened. Tati, a well-established YouTuber with 5 million subscribers, recently released a video entitled Bye Sister, in which she addresses her own drama with James, as well as mentioned a few things that had to do with my previous video about him and his behavior around straight men. James did make a response video to Tati, and with the story being blasted all over the internet, you guys reached out to me for my input on the situation. It is important for me to note that I've been a fan of both Tati and James for a while now. I followed their friendship closely back in the day, and as of recent, I haven't been watching much of either. With that being said, I'm more inclined to trust Tati because I've always had a very high opinion of her. That is where I stand on these two. I just want to be as transparent as possible. I'm not a stan of either, but I like both. Before we get started on the main course, I want to establish my baseline with both Tati and James. This is a video I took from Tati's channel entitled Speaking My Truth from August of last year, in which she talks very openly about the drama in the beauty community. In this video, we can see Tati is one to speak with her hands. She's more reserved in her movements, and when she goes into emotion, her eyes will glue into positions on both the left and the right while she thinks. Tati is not one to make jerky movements. Her body flows with her while she speaks. She'll smile when she's stressed. That's fairly normal. And her blink rate is pretty steady. She speaks at a decent pace, and for emphasis she'll lean into her words. Her portrayal mode seems to be very natural. This is how Tati acts whenever she's being her authentic self. As for James Charles, it was harder for me to find a video in which he was just sitting down in front of the camera and talking. I don't want any videos in which he's talking and eating, or talking and doing his makeup, because I feel as though that would change a few of his mannerisms. For James, I decided to look at this video with 17, ironically titled James Charles on Why He's Staying Out of Beauty Blogger Drama. In a non-stressful, zero-drama environment, James speaks with his hands in a bigger way than Tati does. His blink rate is naturally very high. I'm not entirely sure if false lashes have anything to do with that. He's jerky when he's in portrayal. Again, I'm not happy with the videos I had to choose from, but this is the best I could do. His eyes tend to gravitate towards the right in most of his interviews while he's thinking of what to say next. He speaks very fast and rarely takes a breath. When James gets stressed out, he'll blink for longer periods of times and smile. He smiles a lot more than Tati does, and in interviews you can tell James is much more rehearsed and less off the cuff. James is a lot sloppier in his movements, but that's okay because he's young and that's what's expected of him. Alright, now that we have the baselines of both YouTubers summed up, let's jump into Tati's newest video about James.
Hey you guys, welcome to today's video. Obviously from the title you know that this is going to be intense, different, and this is absolutely not a video I ever thought in a million years that I would be making, but I feel after a lot of thought that it's necessary for me to have a chat with you guys. So here we are, and I'm gonna talk about it all. Obviously, so many of you guys understand that this is more than just a sponsored post. It has layers. There's so much going on with James Charles right now that I do not support, that I do not agree with.
Very quickly, before we get any further into Tati's video, I want to say that after watching the 43-minute long video on her channel, that I was able to cut the video down to less than 10 minutes. This is because she makes very few claims about James's actual character. The rest of the video is a lot of filler. She emotionally explains her relationship with James and how far back they go. She speaks on her and her husband's involvement in negotiating contracts for James in the past. She talks about her company a little bit, addresses Gabriel Zamora's video about her, and essentially gushes how James was important to her and how sad she is that their friendship has come to an end. I chose to take these bits out of the video so we could solely focus on Tati's main points and not have our opinions swayed by any extra information that is quite frankly irrelevant to what truly pushed Tati over the edge. Of course, with James being Tati's close friend, the betrayal is more intense, but it's no secret to anyone that James hurt Tati's feelings. So, moving on. The 4 main claims that Tati makes about James in this video are 1. That James has an ego on him and is extremely selfish. 2. That James has used disgusting language when talking about straight men and usually not at the right time or place. 3. That James used his fame, power, and money to police straight men's sexuality and to receive sexual gratification by doing so. And 4. That James lied about how he obtained his Sugar Bear hair contract. This next clip is Tati talking about her first point.
The moment that everything kicked off, he started panicking, he was texting me, and then it got increasingly demanding. And I don't deal well with someone telling me that I need to accept an apology on their terms to fix their problems. So when you cannot even say, I'm so sorry, I knew this was gonna hurt you, I hate seeing you cry. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're feeling this upset. Like, I didn't think that you would be this upset. When you can't have any emotion for the other person who loves you so much, and all you're caring about is your image, and that people are questioning if it's you, and people are commenting, and that's what you're worried about, I'm not okay with that, and I need to take a time out.
Nothing out of the ordinary to see here. Tati is speaking her truth. She's stressed out, that's why you see the smile creep up on her face. She's hurt by this and genuinely feels as though James was in some way demanding her to accept his apology. No proof of demanding behavior was given, however, that doesn't mean that the demanding behavior didn't exist. Tati is not necessarily picturing anything in her head when she speaks, and is more so focusing on the words that she's saying. Her eyes, like I said in the beginning of this video, have a tendency to bounce back and forth at a normal pace. In this clip, she does tend to stay more in the constructive mindset, but there aren't any other tells of deception, so it just shows to me that she's speaking off the cuff and thinking about what she's saying as she's saying it. Again, she likes to speak with her hands and use them to show emphasis on certain words. Her body is singing with her right now. I believe that James does personally care about his image and could very well have made Tati feel as though she needed to accept his apology when she wasn't ready to do so.
The last phone conversation that James Charles and I had, he said some things telling me about a situation that happened in Seattle at my birthday, and it literally made me want to vomit. Oh my God, you tried to trick a straight man into thinking he's gay yet again, and somehow you're the victim. You know, it's really disgusting to manipulate someone's sexuality, especially when they are still, emerging into adulthood and don't quite have everything figured out. You are using your fame, your power, your money to play with people's emotions. You're threatening to ruin them. You're threatening to embarrass them. And you're doing that to have them behave sexually in your favor, even if they're straight. And you know what? That's not okay. That behavior is not okay. Whether you're a woman, a man, gay, straight, bi, whatever sexual orientation you are, that is your personal call, and it is not someone else's to take. It's not someone else's to play with. It's not someone else's to mess with. And how dare you laugh about it and make meme after meme and retweet and this and that and I love straight boys, and make it a joke.
Again, Tati's body sings with her. This is her version of the truth. Tati is visibly remembering the conversations that she had with James Charles in which she deemed inappropriate. Again, there isn't any clear mention of exactly what was said, but it is clear that Tati feels frustrated by it. This particular clip comes off as very angry and defensive. When Tati says it's really disgusting to manipulate someone's sexuality, she faces the camera head on, not showing any sign of attempting to visualize the specific situation that she's talking about. However, I believe this is because Tati wasn't necessarily wanting to give specifics for one reason or another, but wanted to go a more emotional route by talking about the implications and consequences of James' alleged actions. I say alleged because this is all hearsay right now, and it's impossible to really be certain if James tried to trick a straight man into thinking he was gay.
His parents came to visit, they had dinner over at my house, and they were lovely, and you guys loved meeting his parents. I was shocked that James even then was saying to his dad that every man is a little bit gay and that there's no such thing as a straight man. And, his dad's like, "You're wrong, James, you're wrong." So talking about that at the dinner table with his parents was kind of weird. Him talking explicitly about sex and things that he would like to do. And I was just like, I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Like, I am used to this around, everyone else, but not his parents. Like, I thought around his parents that he would not behave this way. Like, it was just like, no big deal. Like, sucking dick and cock. Like, I'm just like, oh my God, time and place. And you did it at my birthday dinner. And I made excuses for you then. You were talking in detail about things you wanted to do to the waiter. And when I said, James, he's straight, your response was, doesn't matter, I'm a celebrity. So freaking gross. And you said that in front of my family. In front of my childhood friends. I had to call every one of them up the next morning and apologize on your behalf because it was so uncomfortable.
This is the only clip that read as a little awkward to me. Tati stutters when giving specifics about the conversation James had with his father, all about straight men being a little gay. Tati accesses portrayal mode a tad bit more, and her eyes stay glued to the constructive side of her brain only during this time. I didn't see any other big tells that would warn me that Tati was completely bluffing about this conversation. However, I will say that Tati did seem a little bit shaky on remembering the details of that conversation. I could see her potentially having had warped the context a little bit. There's a few exaggerative moments, pauses, her blink rate goes up for a second, which as we established earlier, she doesn't tend to blink fast unless there's something in the words that she's saying that stress her out. So this read to me as having potential of being over-dramatized. I will definitely speak more about this again later in my video whenever I give my final verdict and my opinion on the situation.
You know, add insult to injury, the Sugar Bear hair thing, that was a blatant lie. Like, come on. You went to Coachella, somehow had a security issue, and magically Sugar Bear hair is there with a contract in hand to save the day for you and all of your friends. No company would ever go out of their way to have an extra, handful of passes that cost thousands of dollars a piece, like just in case. There's value there and there's a value exchange. Like, Gabriel's correct about that. Brands know what they're doing. And that leads me to believe that this was orchestrated beforehand, but he had an emotional conflict because of me and promises he made to me behind the scenes. So he had to come up with a very clever story and didn't tell me right when he got back, but after the little bit was posted on their launch day. Are you kidding me? You say you don't like this brand at all and that it would be embarrassing. So stick with that. Stick to what you speak, practice what you preach. You say that you're the realist, you can't be bought. Well, you just were. I don't think you were in a dangerous situation. I really, really don't. You know fair well how crowds are. So if you did think there was going to be a dangerous situation, I think you would have brought your own security. You have the millions and millions and millions in your account to do that, but you lied to me. Made up a story. You knew this would be embarrassing for me. No, our relationship is not transactional. I have never asked you for anything in return. You should have walked away. You should have held on to your integrity. You're a phony. I know that now. I know that you're easily bought, that a good time is more important to you than your integrity. And if everybody's like, oh, come on, a 10-second ad, it means nothing. If it meant nothing, they would have just said, have the security and safety. Don't worry about us. But no, there was a negotiation and I do this and you do that because there's value there.
She genuinely believes that she has a good idea of what went down. It's clear to me that Tati is solely in emotion. The logic is there, and it makes sense, so I can't complain. When I look at James's video, hopefully we can see whether or not he'll back up what Tati is saying about him lying with his body language. She again gives more hearsay accusations about James's feelings about Sugar Bear that reads a little too emotional for me to accurately determine whether or not she's telling the truth. But either way, I believe that there was a major oversight in James's judgment when it came to promoting Sugar Bear.
I feel like I've said my piece. I don't know what's going to happen next, to be honest. I'm scared. But if I didn't make this video and I didn't say things publicly, I think that I would be feeling worse.
So this is all for my Tati reading, but now let's look at James's response video.
Hi all, James here. I'm currently traveling abroad and just woke up, but I wanted to sit down and make a video addressing everything that's going on right now, because I owe everybody an explanation. A lot of most of my career over the past few years has been about me making mistakes and trying to learn and grow from them, and I haven't always done the best job of that. I can admit that, but I have always tried. Because I know there's a lot of people watching me, and that a lot of people look up to me as a role model. And I hate knowing that I disappointed not only them, but most importantly, two people that have been role models to me.
Right off the bat, you can tell this time around that we're getting a much different James. He's speaking slower. His blink rate is still high, but he's not blinking as spastically as he normally does. He's breathing in through his mouth, and it sounds like his nose might be a little stuffed up. He's stiff. He definitely isn't moving his hands. I think this is his attempt at being professional and less childlike. He's on the defense. It shows when he says, "I haven't always done the best job, but I can admit that." James's eyes usually tend to gravitate towards the right side of his brain whenever he speaks normally, but this time around it seems as though he's already had an idea of what he's going to say and is pretty firm in his speech. This is why you'll see him look over to the left more. This way he can focus on the emotion and not worry about getting too worked up. He presses his lips together after the phrase, "A lot of people see me as a role model," which indicates to me that he's using that as a self-soothing tactic. This movement, depending on other body language cues, can sometimes read as the swallowing of one's words, but in this case there aren't any tells that read as deception yet, so it reads to me as more of a way for him to release stress without being outwardly awkward. Unfortunately, the drastic change in his behavior is what a lot of people latched onto, and it's one of the biggest reasons as to why people thought that there might be something fishy going on.
In regards to the Coachella situation with the brand deal and the security guard, I've already told my truth about this twice. And instead of talking about it for a third time and explaining it and going into detail and pulling up receipts, it doesn't matter. And I understand that no matter what I say or do, there are always going to be people that don't believe me and will think that I'm lying, and that's okay. At this point, the truth really does not matter. It's the feelings that do, and no matter what happened, I hurt two very, very important people.
There are a lot of slow blinks whenever he mentions the brand deal and the security guards. That would be considered unusual behavior for James. He has somewhat jerky movements when he talks about pulling up receipts, and in this moment I would say that even though James usually displays jerky behavior, this is a little different because he's incredibly stiff in the video until now. Also, logically, I question why he didn't insert any receipts if he claimed he had them. It doesn't help his case. You can see him soothe himself, and there might be a small smile that starts creeping up slightly. This is a stress smile, but it's more prominent now that he's talking about the only segment I had questions about, so I could see some deception in this. And saying that the truth doesn't matter is incredibly silly.
In regards to the boy situation, boys have been a topic that I've talked a lot about on my social media journey, and it's a topic that I wish I hadn't. I've been involved with a lot of very unique and strange situations that have left people confused or upset, and I've learned the hard way about ways that I can interact with boys that I'm interested in, and also ones that I should or shouldn't be talking to. This is a conversation that I know a lot of people are uncomfortable with, and it's something that I should have been far more careful with bringing into the public eye, especially with the last situation that just happened. I've had to learn it the hard way. But coincidentally enough, Tati really was one of the people to sit me down and tell me how it looked from the outside, and let me know, hey, talking to these boys might get you in trouble one day. And she was right.
His body sings with him here. The only thing I want to add is whenever James gets overloaded with information, he closes his eyes. It isn't a blink or a slow blink, he just shuts them for a moment. This, along with pressing his mouth together repeatedly, is a way to stop himself from being as stressed out as he is.
A lot of times when I've had to address things in the past, I've acted out of impulse, and I've gone off and tried to pull receipts or facts or screenshots and play the victim. And I'm not doing that today. I'm not. That is all I have to say. I'm sorry.
This is all I have to say for the James Charles reading, but now I want to talk a little bit about my previous James Charles reading, the one that I did more so about Gage. On April 18th, Gage released his first video about James Charles, in which Gage talks solely about a tweet James made regarding him. In this tweet, James claims that Gage led him on. On April 19th, one day later, a video on Nikita Dragon's channel was released with James, in which James told a story about a boy who had told him he was bi, had showed romantic interest in him, and then later on went to claim that he was straight. Then, on April 29th, 10 days later, Gage released another video claiming that he had informed James that he was straight before going to Coachella with him, and that James was trying to police his sexuality. I made a false connection with these two stories and assumed, based on timing, that the story that James told on Nikita's video was about Gage, without realizing James never spoke about Coachella in Nikita's video. The parallels that James told, however, were close enough to make the connection, so I used that video to give context to a story that it wasn't about. However, the main point of my video was not necessarily about the story, and more so about Gage's body language in his second video. I still wholeheartedly stand behind my reading in which I said I believed Gage was lying about having told James he was straight, and that he used James for a trip to Coachella. I believe that James' text messages to Gage proved this point. I will insert them here in order for you to pause and read them. On May 12th, the boy who James was talking about in Nikita's video, Sam, released his statement about what happened in Seattle. Sam's video was not necessarily as accusatory as Gage's was. The only point that mirrored Gage's video was the claim that James policed his sexuality. Sam explains that James had been talking to Gage at the same time that he had been talking to him, and shows a clip of himself and James on FaceTime at the end of the video that almost seems as if Sam were hurt by this revelation. Sam went on to delete his video and then re-upload it without the FaceTime call, but I was able to record it for myself.
I'm just gonna jump straight into it. So I just kind of watched the Gage thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of in all honesty, I think you were talking to him at the same time you were talking to me.
Yeah, we were. It's like lighting hair.
It's just, I mean, how would you feel if I was talking to and hanging out with someone else while you were talking to me, right? That's...
You probably were.
I wasn't.
Sam's video came out extremely late, which is questionable, but I did want to bring it up and give you guys the true context of what happened. With all of that being said, over the past few days there have been a lot of stories surfacing around on Twitter, and a lot of people calling James a predator. I wanted to see what everyone was talking about, so I took it upon myself to find every story that I could claiming that James displayed predatory behavior. The first story that I found was from a woman named Zara Larsson. She's a Swedish singer who took to Twitter to say that James had DM'd her straight boyfriend on Twitter multiple times, then going on to delete that tweet, correcting herself, saying that in reality, James only ever DM'd him once, and that he had left a few comments under his pictures. The second story that I found was similar to Zara's, where James had left multiple comments on Shawn Mendes' Instagram, but Shawn himself said that he was not uncomfortable by these messages, and that he was actually flattered by them. The third story I found was about a verified Tinder account that James supposedly had, in which he had his gender listed as female. I'm unaware if these screenshots have been doctored, but either way, I'm not entirely sure how any of that could imply that James is a predator. He doesn't look like a female, and false listings of gender do happen all the time on Tinder. The fourth story plays off of this one, in which a Twitter user by the name ASAP Alana claimed that James had catfished the entire soccer team from their high school into believing that he was a woman, but also later on said that she didn't have enough evidence to expose him for this, leading me to believe that this is all hearsay. The fifth story is about Cameron Boyce and Debbie Ryan, in which 3 years ago, 2016, James, who was 16 at the time, texted Debbie Ryan saying that her co-star Cameron Boyce, who was also 16 at the time, was incredibly attractive. It is important to note that this was before the time of PC culture, and I genuinely do believe that James was joking in a very cringy way. This is not enough to call him a predator, though. And last but not least, the final story that I found about James is a much lengthier one, and it comes from a Twitter user named Teenager Lilac. I will say that right off the bat, this Twitter appears to be a burner account. It only had 7 tweets at the time of me collecting the screenshots of this person's story. It is also important to note that this person is not the person that James Charles supposedly sexually assaulted, but a friend of said person. Now, I'll leave these on the screen for you to read, but I do believe that this should be taken with a grain of salt solely because there isn't any evidence that supports these claims, and it could have very well have been made from a burner account as a fake story to circulate more drama. But I'll let you decide whether or not you think this is enough to call James a predator. So I'll wrap this video up with my final opinion about the situation. I think that both James and Tati are in the wrong. I think it was incredibly petty for a 37-year-old woman to not handle this privately and to instead put James Charles on blast to millions of people because he pissed her off by speaking to drama channels about his side. He's 19. If Tati genuinely wasn't expecting James to want to share his side to drama channels, she's stupid. Tati ruined James Charles's career over allegations about boys that I think are baseless and miss the mark completely. Just because she was friends with him at one point does not make her the queen of everything involving James Charles's life. Jeffree Star, who's a third party in this incident, went on Twitter claiming that James was a predator without giving proof, and I think that's incredibly hypocritical of Jeffree, considering he of all people would know what it's like to make mistakes and say vile things when he was younger, all while claiming that he should be seen as not a racist because he's grown past that, but in that same breath not allowing James the ability to grow. Labeling James as a predator will stay with him forever, and he's only 19. That is so incredibly disgusting to me. The amount of people on social media that were quick to rejoice that James Charles was losing his livelihood was incredibly appalling. This is the type of behavior that pushes people to commit suicide. There are screenshots provided in T-Spill's video that show James saying he felt uncomfortable commenting on Tati until she reached out to him privately, and that he did not want to be seen as a victim in this situation. PewDiePie recently put up a video that addressed a lot of the same problems that I had with Tati's video from an ethical and emotional standpoint. However, he got a boatload of hate because of what he said in that video. I think that James was unnecessarily bullied in this situation, and the amount of people that have rallied behind James to dehumanize him and categorize him as a monster makes me sick. He's young, he made a mistake, he hasn't done or said anything people I know in my personal life haven't done or said. It's just because he has millions of subscribers and the fact that he hurt Tati's feelings that got him into this mess. Honestly, shame on everyone that was involved. And that's all I have to say about this situation. Thank you so much for watching this video and for supporting my channel. I will catch you guys on the next video.